Hi friends, thank you for joining me today. We are talking about a conversation that is relevant to everyone and I'm so excited about it. It is the relationship that we have with that critical voice inside of our head. Some people call it the inner critic. And I'm one that likes to talk about nuances and real life scenarios and how that can affect our inner life, our performance, and our relationship with ourselves and others. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe because I'm going to have more content like this on Tuesdays. It will be a variety of things, but Tuesdays. Not sure what time, but Tuesdays. Okay, so that inner voice, that inner critic, okay, that critical voice inside of your head. For some people, it's very, very loud, like a concert, like a rock concert. It's just blaring in your head. You feel that critical voice nonstop. For others, it's more like occasionally, occasionally it'll pop up. And I really want to discuss not the existence of it because I think we all have one. If you don't, then I'd like to hear your tips. But it's not about ignoring that critical voice or the inner critic, which I've heard a lot of people, maybe that works for you and there is a place to ignore it, but it's more redefining our relationship with that critical voice inside of our heads. And here's why. Because if you just try to suppress that inner critic in your head, the visual that I had for that is it's like whack-a-mole, okay? Do y'all remember back in the day going, for me it was called Showbiz, but I think it's Chuck E. Cheese and I don't know. Okay, this was way back in the day when I was little, but I would love, you take this little bopper, I guess you call it a bopper, but it's this thing with the handle, it's got the cushion and these little pink plastic and yellow plastic things just kind of pop up, and then you whack it, and you see how many times that you can, get all the little creatures down in a certain amount of time, and that determines how many tickets that are dispensed. So, our critical voice, if you treat it like a whack-a-mole game, right? Then it's just it's going to keep pinging up. It's going to keep popping up because our non-conscious mind and the subconscious is a driver of our thoughts a lot of times. And so sometimes you're going to feel criticized internally. And if you continually suppress it more in different situations, in different scenarios, in different relationships, more are going to just keep pinging up, okay? So I'm going to read a little bit of, in my book, The Clingy Type, okay? The Clingy Type, this is my latest book. I have other books, but I will link this one below. And I do talk about, it's really to cultivate that closeness of the relationship. I am a Christian, so that closeness of your relationship with Christ. But this also, it talks about the cult leader. And I'm going to read a little bit about that because it's relevant for what we are discussing. So, okay, so I am on page 53. If you want to check it out, page 53, I'm going to link it below. It is sometimes those heavy weights, okay, because with a critical voice, you feel the heavy weight. Sometimes those heavy weights are the voices you need to start tuning out, okay? You'll say, Jenny, you said don't tune out the critical voice. Yes, there is a time and place where you do, but we're going to go full circle and talk about it. So sometimes those heavy weights are the voices you need to start tuning out. Maybe the cult leader you follow is the critical voice in your head. Let go of the pressure to perform. Let go of the voice of condemnation. If you are struggling with fear, you may have been building on the wrong foundation. Okay? So if that critical voice is the cult leader that you follow, then you're never going to be able to rest. You're never going to be able to feel like you can land, right? Your body's not going to feel integrated with your soul and your spirit, because you're going to always feel that spirit of uneasiness and unrest. And you're going to feel like you're more in a reactionary state, where you're being pulled this way and you're being pulled this way and that way. Instead of just being able to rest and be able to do your best in a place of creativity, in a place of freedom. And you're going to feel those yokes of bondage if you treat the critical voice like a cult leader, okay? So some of us are like married to that critical voice in our heads, right? And we need to extract the critical voice and look at it and say, how do I see my relationship with this critical voice in my head? Okay, the inner critic. So what would be an example? Let's say, okay, so I'm an author, right? So if I were to listen to the critical voice when I am trying to write a new sentence, if I'm trying to constantly edit myself while I'm in the creative process, I really need to kind of ignore that critical voice altogether, right? And so there's times that you take that critical voice and you block it out altogether. There are times for that. If it is hindering you, okay? So if it's no longer serving you, if it's hindering you, treat it like a robocaller. Treat it like a spam call and simply block that thing, right? Block it, block it, block it. So we need to determine, is it hindering or is it helping? Is that inner critic hindering me or is it helping me? Okay. And this is the fork in the road, if you will, where we redefine the relationship we have with the inner critic, the critical voice. Now, there are times where that critical voice may be helping you. But here's the thing. You have to feel loved in the moment and feel grace and compassion, self-compassion for yourself in the moment, even when it's helping you. Okay, so maybe you said something in a relationship where it was not as edifying as it could be, and you have regret about it. Okay, so that critical voice, it's telling you you should not have said that. You could have said it a better way. You could have said it in a more loving way. And so you kind of temporarily want to listen to it as a course corrector, as kind of a tour guide, if you will, to when you're replaying a scenario or a situation in a fruitful way, not in a spinning way, not in a ruminating or an anxious way, but when you take time in the spirit of grace to say, wow, probably shouldn't have said that in that harsh tone, or probably shouldn't have eaten that extra powdered donut, whatever it may be. I am strictly talking hypothetical. But that critical voice is going to pop up. And so really, in that moment, you have to determine, is it helping me or is it hindering me? I think when the critical voice in our heads, at least for me, when it becomes like a cult leader, when it's the only voice that I follow, then I will find myself in unhealthy patterns of perfectionism, where the pendulum will swing from perfectionism to apathy. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It can also lead you to feeling out of touch and can lead to patterns of burnout. So, I think the critical voice in our heads can actually be helpful if we're able to peacefully integrate it within the spirit of grace. Okay? So there's grace and truth. Jesus was filled with grace and truth. And I think it is imperative that we don't try to suppress again, because it'll be like whack-a-mole and it'll just keep pinging up, because if you suppress part of it, you haven't really closed the loop. You haven't peacefully integrated that critical voice in your head. Okay? Because sometimes it's there for a reason. Now, I do think some people have more of a tender conscience or more of a hypervigilance. And if you're kind of like extra hard on yourself and you are like having that hyper vigilant mentality, then that critical voice is going to be amped up, and you may not want it to be so loud all the time, but kind of like, so it's not running through your head. You're going to want to decrease the volume. Okay. But I think ignoring the critical voice in our head has not been fruitful, because I've done that before, and it'll just pop up in other situations and other scenarios. So rather not treating it as a cult leader, we're not going to follow it blindly. We're not going to ignore it, but rather peacefully integrate it within a fruitful relationship. So I hope this helped you. Please share and subscribe. I love coming on here and chatting with you. And please comment if this was helpful to you. Hope you have a great day.